My beloved, you've been quiet for a while now, not just in the way you speak to others, but in the deeper way you respond to me. There's been a slowing inside you, a weight you can't fully name. You haven't stopped believing, not exactly, but you've stopped reaching with the same openness you once had. It's as if your soul began to close itself gently, like a door being pushed by wind. No slam, no sound, just slow retreat. You didn't mean for it to happen. Life just wore you down in a quiet way. And somewhere along the path, silence started to feel safer than vulnerability. You've carried so much internally without knowing how to release it. There are things you wanted to say to me, but didn't know how. Not because you didn't trust me, but because your own voice felt too heavy, too unsure, too weary to shape the words. So you said less. You prayed less. You stopped waiting for an emotional confirmation before you talked to me. And then, somewhere along the way, you began to wonder if I noticed that your silence had settled in. What you didn't know, what you couldn't have known, is that I never turned away, not even for a moment. I stayed, even when you couldn't feel me, even when you barely acknowledged me, even when you questioned whether I still cared about the version of you that wasn't strong, passionate, or expressive anymore. You may have gone silent, but I never did. I've been present in every pause. I've listened to what you didn't say, and I felt the weight of what you carried beneath your stillness. This silence you've walked through isn't a failure. It's not a setback. It's not even a delay. It's an invitation, one you didn't realize you were answering. I know the silence wasn't comfortable. I know there were moments you questioned what was wrong with you. You thought maybe your faith had faded. Maybe your devotion wasn't enough. Maybe I had grown distant because your passion had cooled. But the truth is far more tender than that. What you've been walking through is not disconnection. It's exposure. The kind that happens when a soul has been stripped of its noise and is learning, slowly, to trust again, without spectacle. There's something sacred about the version of you that has nothing left to prove. You've arrived at a place that feels empty, but is actually fertile. Because now, for the first time in a long while, there's room in you for something new to be planted. There's space that hasn't been crammed with effort or obligation. There's stillness, not because you intended it, but because you ran out of the strength to fill the space yourself. That kind of silence may feel like nothing. But I see it as surrender. You didn't shut me out. You just didn't know how to bring me what you couldn't define. And I don't need clarity from you. I never have. I just need permission. And in your own way, by staying here, by continuing to walk forward even without the same language you once had, you've given me that permission. I've watched you close your eyes without words. I've watched you breathe deeply instead of speak. I've seen you press your hand to your heart, as if to hold it in place. I was there for all of it. And to me, those were prayers. You didn't know it, but they were. I've never measured your relationship with me by how often you speak. I measure it by how often you let me stay, and even in silence, you've let me stay. That matters more than you realize. Tonight, I want to take the pressure off of you. You don't have to recover some old version of yourself to be close to me again. You don't need to chase emotional clarity or find the right words to pray. You don't need to rehearse what went wrong, or trace every step that led you here. What you need is rest. Not the kind that numbs, but the kind that receives. The kind that doesn't need an answer to exhale. The kind that trusts my presence even when you feel nothing stirring. There's been a quiet transformation happening under the surface of your silence. You've learned to sit in uncertainty without giving up entirely. You've learned to stay soft, even as disappointment crept in. You've stayed close, even when your feelings didn't follow. And that counts. You may not see the fruit yet, but I do. I see roots growing deeper. I see resilience taking shape. I see a new kind of strength in you, not the loud, commanding kind, but the still anchored kind. The kind that doesn't waver when emotions shift. The kind that will carry you into your next season with stability you didn't know you had. I want you to know that I've been speaking to you, even in the silence. Not with commands, not with visions, just with presence. I've been sitting beside you while your thoughts turned in circles. I've been holding the tension you couldn't resolve. I've been listening to the fear behind your quiet. I haven't been waiting for you to break the silence. I've been in it with you. And now, as you begin to feel me again, not dramatically but gently, I want you to trust what's unfolding. It doesn't have to look like it did before. You're not going back to who you were. You're becoming someone even more honest, more grounded, more connected to me than ever. Let this silence become the soil where something new takes root. And let it be enough for now that you are here, and I am too. Let's walk into what's next together without rushing. There's no pressure to make sense of everything. Just stay with me. That's all I ask. Your presence, even wordless, is more than enough. You started to believe that your silence meant distance, that if you weren't speaking, praying, or worshiping like before, maybe you had drifted too far. You assumed I wanted something louder from you, something clearer. You began to treat your quiet as a problem to fix, a gap to close, a failure to overcome. But I never saw it that way. What you called distance, I called invitation. What you called disconnection, I called depth forming. You were never as far from me as you thought, but I understand why you believed that. The silence felt unnatural at first. It felt like something was missing, and when you looked for emotion and couldn't find it, when you reached for words and they didn't come, you panicked internally. You wondered if I had withdrawn, if maybe your slow fading inward meant you'd somehow broken something between us. That lie settled into the corners of your heart, quietly. It didn't accuse you loudly. It whispered instead. You're becoming spiritually dull. You've stopped caring. God has probably stopped noticing. And because the voice sounded so familiar, so much like your own, you didn't know how to push back. But tonight I want to be clear with you. That voice was not mine. I don't manipulate you with fear. I don't motivate you through guilt. I don't retreat when you become quiet or confused. That's not my way. I don't walk away from the ones I love simply because they don't know what to say. If that were true, I would have left long ago. But I didn't. I stayed. And I've been gently pushing back against the lies, waiting for your heart to become soft enough again to hear the truth. And the truth is, your value was never in your volume. Your intimacy with me was never built on the consistency of your devotion. It was built on my commitment to stay with you through every season, high or low, clear or clouded, expressive or silent. You may have measured your nearness to me by how much you felt. I never did. I measured it by how much you trusted me to stay close, even when you had nothing to give. You've never disappointed me by being human. Your struggle doesn't scare me. Your silence doesn't confuse me. I don't need noise to be present. I only need honesty. And even when you didn't know how to express what was happening, your honesty was evident. You didn't pretend. You didn't perform. You just sat in the uncertainty. And even that was a form of faith because you stayed. That matters more than you realize. You've internalized so many messages over time about what real faith looks like, and most of them left you exhausted. You learned to equate discipline with love, passion with legitimacy, emotional expression with spiritual success. So, when all of those faded, when your discipline grew inconsistent, when your passion waned, when your emotions shut down, you assumed the whole relationship was unraveling. But I never said, those things were requirements. You added them, often without knowing it, shaped by the expectations around you. You thought staying faithful meant staying expressive. But what if real faithfulness, in this season, has looked like something far quieter? What if faithfulness was staying present while feeling nothing? What if it was refusing to walk away even when part of you wanted to shut down? What if it was whispering my name without drama? Just a quiet ache for me to still be near. That's the kind of faith that moves me deeply. That's the kind of love that reveals its roots, not in emotion, but in endurance. You're not spiritually broken. You're spiritually bare. And I can work with that. In fact, I do my best work there. When all the layers have peeled back and all that remains is your actual soul, stripped of its effort, no longer trying to impress anyone, including me. This is where I rebuild. I start with the pieces you thought were too quiet to matter. The forgotten parts, the overlooked parts, the exhausted, confused, uncertain parts. I don't need your fire to return before I draw close. I don't need your hunger to roar. I just need your yes. And even if you can't say it aloud, I know when it lives quietly inside your heart, that's enough. So stop measuring your health by how loud your prayers sound. Stop comparing this season to the ones that came before. You are not backsliding. You are being refined. And the silence that once felt like absence is becoming the space where truth can finally take root. Truth not built on performance, but on my presence. You don't have to prove anything right now. Not to me. Not to yourself. I'm already convinced of your worth. So let that truth begin to unravel the lies that try to settle in your silence. You don't have to fight them all at once. Just notice them, name them, and then let me speak louder than them, not with force, but with stillness that pierces deeper than noise ever could. Let this be the beginning of something different, not a return to how things used to be, but the slow, beautiful beginning of how it was always meant to be. You didn't just become silent. Something in you began to dim long before your words quieted. It happened gradually. A few small disappointments that you told yourself didn't matter. A couple of prayers that went unanswered in ways you didn't know how to process. A moment when you showed up with your full heart and it was misunderstood. Another when you were hurting deeply but no one noticed, not even the people closest to you. Each one felt survivable on its own. But together they started to teach you something you never meant to learn, that speaking your heart wasn't safe. And slowly, without realizing it, you started to pull your spirit inward, not out of rebellion, but as a defense. Not because you stopped loving me, but because you didn't know what to do with the places where I felt distant. You didn't want to accuse me, but you didn't want to pretend either. So silence became a kind of middle ground, a way of staying in the room without having to speak through the ache. I understood that. You've lived long enough to know that not every disappointment has easy answers. And while your faith in me didn't disappear, your ability to engage with me became fragile. You didn't want to risk opening your heart, only to feel that sting again. The sting of waiting, of not being heard, of giving your all and not knowing what it changed. So you stopped bringing me the parts of you that felt most uncertain. You still believed I was good. You still believed I was near. You just didn't know how to talk to me about the things that made that belief harder to feel. I never resented that, because what I see, what I've always seen, is that your silence wasn't avoidance. It was grief. And grief isn't disobedient. It's just heavy. You've been carrying more than you let yourself acknowledge. You've stayed strong for too long. You've tried to move forward without properly tending to the fractures beneath your resilience. But even when you didn't give yourself permission to feel it all, your body kept the score. Your heart remembered, and your soul in its wisdom grew quiet to survive. That quiet wasn't a flaw, it was a signal. A signal that something needed healing far beneath the surface of your performance. A signal that you didn't need more activity. You needed presence. You didn't need to do more for me. You needed to be held by me. And I was ready the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you picked up the belief that healing has to look like strength, that you should bounce back fast, that you should only linger in sadness for a little while before rising again. But that's not how I see you, and I never asked you to suppress what broke you. I never asked you to fake peace. I never told you to toughen up and get over it. I asked you to bring the broken pieces to me, even if all you could do was sit with them. I'm not disappointed that you've struggled. I'm not surprised by your hesitation to trust again. I know where it started. I was there the first time someone dismissed your pain. I was there when you said something vulnerable and were met with silence. I was there when you reached out and no one reached back. And though those moments didn't feel catastrophic, they created small ruptures. Over time, they shaped how you see yourself, how you see me. And now I'm inviting you to let me revisit those places, not to relive them, not to shame you, but to heal what was left unattended. I want to walk back with you to the moments that stole your voice. I want to touch the parts of your memory that you locked away because you thought you had to be okay. You don't need to perform strength anymore. I never asked you to. Your silence wasn't a rebellion. It was a survival instinct, and I honor the way you kept going, even when everything in you wanted to shut down. I see the courage it took to keep waking up, to keep walking into rooms, to keep showing up for others when no one was showing up for your heart. But I also want more for you than survival. I want restoration. I want you to speak again, but only when it comes from safety, not from pressure. I want you to feel again, but only when it's anchored in trust, not performance. I want you to breathe without bracing, to rest without apology, to open without fear. And I want you to know this. I never needed you to process your pain perfectly. I only needed you to let me into it. So if you're ready, I'll meet you in the places where your voice first started to go quiet. I'll meet you in the in-between moments. I'll meet you where the light dimmed and the walls started to rise. You don't need to tear them down alone. Just open one window. Just unlock one door. Just let me step into the room you've kept sealed. There's no rush, no pressure, only presence. And healing begins again, not with noise or intensity, but with that one small, courageous act, staying present in the silence and letting me meet you there. There are signs that something in you is shifting. You might not have named them yet, but they're there. Quiet signs, small signals, a breath that feels just a little deeper than before, a moment in your day when your thoughts didn't feel quite so heavy, a night when you went to sleep without the weight pressing so hard on your chest. It doesn't look like breakthrough. It doesn't sound like celebration. But I see the movement, and I want you to see it too. Healing rarely announces itself loudly. It comes in whispers, in small moments of return, in tiny decisions to stay open for one more minute, to soften instead of shut down, to notice instead of numb. And that's exactly what's been happening in you. Slowly, silently, steadily. You haven't been failing, you've been healing. What you call inconsistency, I call courage. You've taken hesitant steps forward. Some days you felt nothing. Some days you wanted to disappear again. But you didn't. You stayed. You remained open, even when it didn't feel productive or powerful. That's not weakness. That's resilience. The kind that grows in sacred ground, the kind that no one applauds, but I see clearly. You're beginning to notice beauty again, even if just in flickers. You pause a little longer when sunlight filters through the window. You hear a song and feel something move inside. You find yourself wanting to say, "Thank you," not out of obligation, but because something in you recognizes that you made it through another day, and I was in it. Those are signs, not of emotional recovery, but of spiritual reawakening. The silence that once felt so heavy is no longer your only language. Other tones are emerging, tones of gentleness, curiosity, and quiet hope. You're not forcing them. They're rising from within. That's how you know it's real. You didn't manufacture this. You didn't rehearse it. You simply gave me access, and now healing is doing what healing does, growing beneath the surface. There's still pain. Yes, there are still questions. There are still nights when the silence feels longer than you'd like, but even in those moments, something is different now. Your spirit isn't shut down. It's watching, waiting, listening, and I am speaking not with volume, not with demand, but with tenderness that your heart has learned how to recognize again. You're noticing what doesn't belong anymore. You feel it when something pulls you back toward the patterns you're no longer meant to live in. You feel the resistance, not because you've regressed, but because your spirit is waking up. You're beginning to discern what drains you. You're recognizing what used to numb you. And slowly, without needing to explain it, you're choosing differently. Not perfectly, but faithfully. These are not small things. These are the earliest signs of resurrection. You've asked me, what if I never feel like I used to? And the truth is, you're not meant to. You're not returning to your old self. You're becoming someone new, someone more honest, someone more anchored, someone who doesn't need to be loud to be alive, someone who trusts peace more than performance. And peace is what I'm growing in you now. You don't have to protect it. You don't have to manage it. Just notice it. Let it surprise you. Let it interrupt your patterns. Let it slow you down when you feel the familiar urge to hurry or to prove something. When your body tenses out of habit, pause. When your thoughts begin to spiral, return. You're no longer at war with yourself. You're no longer alone in your silence. You're being rebuilt. The slow return of presence is the proof. Presence with me, presence with yourself, presence with others, not as something you perform, but something you live from. You'll begin to notice that you're less reactive, that you can sit in discomfort a little longer without needing to escape it, that you're becoming less apologetic for needing space, that you're no longer afraid of being quiet in a room, because your silence is no longer shame, it's strength. I see all of this in you, so don't rush to make declarations. Don't worry about explaining what's happening. Just remain here with me. Let what's unfolding stay tender. Let the roots go deeper before the branches stretch out. There will be a time for sharing, for building, for movement. But right now, what's happening inside is sacred, and I don't want you to miss it by trying to turn it into something others can understand too soon. This is a holy shift, one that's shaping your foundation for what comes next. You're not behind. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're becoming. And becoming is enough. The healing that's begun in you needs space to grow. Not effort, not intensity, just space. You're not responsible for forcing it forward. You are responsible for protecting what's been planted. And the way you do that isn't through perfection. It's through alignment. So I want to teach you how to walk in that alignment in the most ordinary parts of your life, because this isn't just a spiritual moment. It's a new way of living. Start with your body. It carries more than you've realized. It has absorbed your stress, your survival instincts, your unspoken tension. You've been bracing without knowing it. Shoulders tight, breath shallow, jaw clenched. These aren't just habits of the body. They're signals from the soul. And I'm not asking you to relax as if this were just a physical correction. I'm asking you to treat your body like the sacred space it is, a place I inhabit with you, a place I want to bring peace into. So check in with yourself. Breathe with intention, not because it's trendy or therapeutic, but because breath was my first gift to you. When you inhale slowly, you return to that gift. When you exhale fully, you release what your nervous system tried to carry alone. If all you did for now was pause twice a day, place your hand over your chest, close your eyes, and breathe, healing would multiply. Not because of technique, but because of awareness. You're not meant to live numb. You're meant to live attuned to your body, to my spirit, to what's real. Now let's talk about your rhythms. You've lived many seasons governed by urgency, always responding, always adjusting, always trying to catch up or stay ahead. But urgency is not your identity. It's not where clarity lives. You are not late. You are not behind. You are on time with me. And time is not your enemy. It's your ally when you walk in rhythm with me. That means rest is not a luxury. It's a spiritual act. You don't rest because you've earned it. You rest because it's part of your design. So I want you to take it seriously again, not just sleep, but restoration. Walks where you leave your phone behind. Mornings where you don't immediately flood your mind with input. Evenings where silence is honored instead of filled. These small practices aren't about isolation. They're about grounding. When you respect your time, your spirit will begin to trust you again. When you stop rushing your healing, your soul will feel safe to open more. And I want your soul to feel safe with you. This is also a time to be gentle with how you spend your emotional energy. Not everyone deserves full access to your inner world. Not every conversation requires your full explanation. You are allowed to conserve your strength. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to feel full in some spaces and quiet in others. That is not a sign of withdrawal. It's a sign of wisdom. I'm showing you how to pace yourself again, because I'm not sending you back into life the way you came out of it. You've been through something that required your silence, and now you're emerging, slowly, with something sacred in your hands. You don't need to give it away too fast. Let it root. Let it change you before you try to share it. This is your permission to be selective with your yes, intentional with your attention, and kind with your energy. Even your thoughts need margin. You've been trained to overprocess, to run every possibility through your mind, to constantly rehearse the next conversation, the next problem, the next decision. But clarity doesn't come through overthinking. It comes through surrender. Let me help you with this. When the cycle starts, interrupt it with truth, not forced positivity, but honest return. Something as simple as, God is still here. I am not alone in this thought. That's not denial. That's anchoring. And if you find yourself slipping back into old patterns, don't panic. Don't shame yourself. Just return. Return without delay. Return without apology. Return without needing to get back to some emotional state. Just come back to awareness, to breath, to me. That's how we'll walk this season together, with rhythm, not performance, with capacity, not chaos, with grace, not guilt. So here's what I want you to remember in the days ahead. You don't have to chase momentum. You need consistency. You don't have to prove you're healed. You just have to keep choosing the path of peace. You don't have to announce your return. You simply have to show up in the places I'm leading you, even if you do it quietly. Your healing is not fragile, but it does deserve care, and I will help you protect it, not by isolating you, but by teaching you how to honor the new strength I've placed inside you. You're learning to live differently now, not with emotional highs, but with sustainable peace, not with urgency, but with flow. And this new way of being will feel unfamiliar at first, but trust me, it will fit. It already does. Because it was always meant for you, and let's keep going slowly, faithfully together. There are names you started answering to that I never called you by. Quiet ones, internal ones. Names that formed not in a single moment, but through slow repetition. You never spoke them out loud, but they started to shape how you saw yourself. especially in the silence. And now, I want to call them out, not to shame you, but to free you from them. Somewhere along the way, you began to see yourself as unreliable, not because you failed me, but because you stopped feeling consistent. Your prayers became rare, your emotions were unpredictable, your devotion didn't look like it used to. And so, without realizing it, you labeled yourself unstable, weak, or disconnected. But I never called you any of those things. You believed you were distant, cold even, and yet you stayed close, closer than you gave yourself credit for. You kept showing up, even if it was just to sit silently. That's not coldness. That's courage. The kind that doesn't need applause to be real. The kind I honor. You've also worn the name too much. Because in moments when you did try to speak, to feel, to ask for help, you felt like a burden. Maybe not directly, but the silence you received in return convinced you that your depth was too deep, your pain too intense, your story too complicated. So you stopped asking. You shrunk a little. You learned to carry alone. And I want to be clear, you were never too much for me. Your silence was never an inconvenience. Your presence, even in pieces, has always been welcome here. I know what you were trying to protect. You weren't hiding because you lacked faith. You were shielding your heart from repeated dismissal. You needed somewhere safe. And when the people around you didn't offer that, you withdrew in ways that felt necessary. But now, that withdrawal has started to define you, and that's where I step in. Because you are not the sum of your protective instincts. You are not the one who disappears or the one who never fully recovers. You are not the emotionally distant one. Those are names you adopted in survival. But they were never your identity. You are still mine. Even beneath the silence, you were known. Even when you felt hollow, you were held. Even when you assumed your absence was unnoticed, I was watching you with full attention. So let me say it plainly. You are not what happened to you. You are not what others failed to see. You are not defined by how long it took you to come back. You are not what the silence tried to convince you you'd become. You are whole, not because you feel it, but because I said it. You are chosen. Not because you proved yourself, but because I created you with purpose. You are deeply loved, not when you're expressive, not when you're productive, but even in the stillness, in the quiet, in the unseen places. You are not fragile. You are healing. You're not behind. You're right on time with me. I know the pressure you've felt to explain yourself, to make your silence make sense to others, to defend your process, but you don't owe anyone an explanation for how I've been tending your soul. Let go of the need to prove that you've grown. Growth that's real doesn't need marketing. It reveals itself naturally in how you carry peace, how you answer gently, how you remain grounded when everything else sways. Let me remove the mask of invisibility now, not because you were faking, but because you no longer need it to survive. You don't have to downplay your sensitivity, your slowness, your caution. Those are not flaws. They're evidence of a soul that's learning to be honest, to be careful with what's sacred, to walk differently than before. You don't have to be the strong one anymore. You don't have to be the silent one either. You're free to be the true one, the one who brings your whole self to me, even if that self is still healing, still quiet, still unfolding. This is what I want from you, not a role, not a performance, not a version of yourself that feels safe to others. I want you, the real you, the one behind the silence, the one behind the years of careful self-management, the one who's learning to trust that I won't reject what others didn't know how to hold. That's the voice I'm calling forward now, the voice that no longer answers to fear, the identity that doesn't belong to labels, the spirit that isn't bound by what went wrong. You're not becoming someone new so much as you're returning to the one I always knew, the one who still belongs, the one who still reflects me, the one who still carries a sound I recognize, even when no words come out. And that's enough. Now that your voice is returning, not through volume, but through presence, it's time to live differently. You don't need to rebuild your life overnight. You only need to live your days in alignment with what's already shifting inside of you. I'm not handing you a new set of expectations. I'm giving you permission to build slowly, honestly, and without pressure. But I also want to show you how to protect what we've rebuilt together. Start by choosing stillness daily. Not just physical stillness, but inner quiet. You've been in silence, yes, but it was mostly filled with unspoken tension, unsorted emotion, and mental movement. Now, I want to teach you how to be still in a new way. Still in trust, still in awareness, still in me. Find 10 minutes, not to perform, not to pray in a structured way, but just to sit in my presence. No agenda, no fixing, just being. That is where clarity grows, and let me be the one who organizes what you've been trying to understand. You've tried to mentally sort your healing. What changed, what didn't, what still hurts, what still confuses you. But this isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a relationship to be nurtured. Every time you sit with me without needing to accomplish something, you teach your spirit that I'm safe again, that I'm not asking for a task. I'm inviting you into rhythm. Another shift I want for you: practice emotional honesty with gentleness. Don't wait for the pressure to explode before you speak. When something unsettles you, when grief returns, when joy surprises you, acknowledge it. Out loud if you can. In writing if you need to. With someone trustworthy if you're ready. Don't internalize everything anymore. That silence used to be necessary, but now it's time to let emotion breathe. You can be tender and truthful at the same time. That's how you'll stay grounded. And when emotion overwhelms you again, and it will sometimes, don't treat it like failure. Let it be what it is, a sign that you are fully alive again. Cry if you need to. Laugh without analyzing it. Rest without apology. Your feelings are not evidence of spiritual instability. They are invitations to connection, and I'll be in all of them with you. Next, protect your space. Not with isolation, but with wisdom. You're not obligated to explain the new version of yourself to everyone. Some people are ready to receive you as you are now. Others are still expecting the you that kept shrinking to make others comfortable. Don't shape-shift to be acceptable. Stay honest, stay kind, and walk away when you need to. That's not selfish. It's sacred stewardship of your healing. Let's also talk about your mornings. Don't rush into noise. Don't let your first thoughts be comparison, obligation, or performance. Start the day with recognition. God is here. I am loved. I don't have to strive. That one sentence, spoken over your breath, can carry you more than a dozen unchecked thoughts. You don't need the perfect devotional plan. You need the awareness that I'm present before you do anything else. That is worship. That is alignment. That is how healing takes root in time, not just in emotion. Let me also invite you into a small discipline. Pause before reacting, not just in conflict, but in life. When a message stirs anxiety, pause. When a task feels too heavy, pause. When someone misunderstands you, pause. And in that space, ask, is this my burden? Is this where you want me to move, God? Or is this a weight I was never meant to carry? Your inner clarity will grow through those pauses. There will also be days when you feel disconnected again. Don't panic. Don't spiral. Return. Return without shame. Return without needing to recreate some emotional high. Just come back to me as you are. Open, honest, willing. That's all I need. And one more thing, embrace joy without guilt. You've been in survival for so long that when happiness enters, it almost feels foreign. But this joy is part of your healing. Don't wait for the other shoe to drop. Don't talk yourself out of it. Let it fill you. Let it stretch you. Let it soften the places that forgot how to feel light. That too is holy. You're being invited into a lifestyle, not a temporary experience. A lifestyle where rest is honored, where silence is trusted, where emotion is not shamed, where truth is spoken gently, where I am with you, not only when you reach out, but in every breath you take. This is how you begin again, with rhythms instead of rules, with space instead of noise, with presence instead of pressure. So let's keep walking together, one decision at a time, one breath at a time, one honest moment at a time. That's how wholeness is lived, not all at once, but fully, steadily, in me. Something has shifted around you, even if it's subtle, even if no one has said it out loud, even if your outer world hasn't yet caught up fully. The truth is, when the inside transforms, the outside begins to respond. The environment around you is adjusting to the new atmosphere within you. You've changed, and the change is real. It didn't come through dramatic declarations. It came through your willingness to stay. It came through the silence you didn't run from. It came through your decision to keep breathing when you had no words left to pray. That kind of shift doesn't go unnoticed in the realm of the spirit. It moves things. It opens things. It draws new things into place. Right now, some doors are beginning to close, but not as punishment, as protection. There are spaces you can no longer shrink yourself to fit inside. People who once felt safe no longer align with your truth. Patterns that once provided comfort now feel foreign. That's not failure. That's forward motion. And though part of you may feel unsure, another part of you knows. It's time. You can't stay where I'm no longer leading you. But it's not just about what's closing. It's about what's opening, too. I'm aligning new voices to find you. Ones that won't pull you out of silence, but will honor what it taught you. I'm bringing relationships that aren't built on who you were, but who you're becoming. You no longer need to prove your value by being endlessly available. You no longer need to play roles that silence your own needs. I'm restoring your relational ecosystem so that you can breathe with others, not hide among them. You felt invisible in some rooms for a long time, overlooked, even when you were present. But I never forgot where you were. And now, I'm reintroducing you, not as someone loud or polished, but as someone true. Your presence carries a different weight now. You walk into rooms with peace, not anxiety. You respond slower, but with clarity. And whether others recognize it yet or not, the atmosphere shifts when you enter, not because you take up space, but because you bring it. Your peace is now prophetic. The gentleness you carry is an act of resistance against chaos. Your steadiness is a testimony, even without words. This is what it means to walk in restoration, not to strive, but to become a signpost for what I've done in the quiet. You don't have to explain it. You don't need to brand it. Just live it. Others will feel the difference. Some will be drawn to it. Some may resist it, but none will ignore it. Don't be surprised if I begin to shift things around you now. Assignments, opportunities, invitations, conversations. They're not random. They're not distractions. They're responses. You've aligned inwardly, and now, my favor is finding its way to your life in places where it couldn't land before. Not because you earned it, but because you're finally positioned to receive it. Stay grounded. Stay soft. Don't rush to interpret everything. Let me lead. If something feels too fast, it probably is. If something stirs anxiety, pause. If something confirms the peace that's been growing in you, lean in. You'll know what's mine. You'll feel it not as urgency, but as clarity. Your discernment is sharper now, not because you read more, but because you listened longer. In the silence, you learned the texture of my voice. You began to recognize what flows from my heart and what only mimics it. Don't dismiss that. Trust the sensitivity you've recovered. It's not a flaw. It's a gift. And with that discernment will come authority. Not the kind that needs to be announced, but the kind that changes atmospheres without effort. You won't need to force your influence. I'll establish it. I'll confirm it. And you'll know it's me because it won't cost you your peace to carry it. You'll begin to notice something else too. Your own compassion is deeper. Not the kind that drains you, but the kind that heals others. You know what it feels like to be unseen, and now you'll see others differently. Your words will carry weight because they've been shaped in silence. Your comfort will be authentic because it was born in places where no one comforted you but me. That's why I let you walk through what you did. Not to punish you, but to shape you into someone trustworthy. And you are trustworthy now. With people, with influence, with silence, with truth. You've become someone who carries my presence, not just my promises. You don't chase validation anymore. You rest in identity. That's why you can walk into the same rooms and feel completely different, because you're not performing anymore. You're just being. And that's where my glory rests. On those who no longer strive to be seen, but who carry the assurance that they've already been seen by me. So let the world adjust. Let the shift continue. Let what no longer fits fall away. Don't mourn what I've removed. It made room for what I've prepared. The fruit is coming. And when it does, it won't require you to shout. It will simply show. You don't need to wonder anymore where my spirit is. He's not on the other side of your efforts, waiting for the right moment to descend. He's already here, not visiting, not testing you, dwelling, remaining, breathing in you. The breath you take when you pause in the middle of anxiety, that's him. The gentle restraint you feel when you're about to say something you'd regret, that's him. The sudden sense of peace in the middle of your overthinking, him, again. You've imagined my presence as something you had to reach for, something you had to chase, something you had to earn with consistency. But I've never made you run toward me. I've always come to you. And now the quiet you once feared has become the very space where you meet me daily. That's what transformation really is. Not a rush of emotion, but the return of breath. Let the Holy Spirit be your breath now, not your last resort, not your emergency response, but your rhythm. You don't have to wait for Sunday for worship, for crisis, or for clarity. You can pause in your car, and I'll meet you. You can walk to the kitchen, and I'll speak. You can be scrolling and suddenly sense me saying, breathe. I'm here. You don't have to make room for me. I am the room. And I want to walk with you in this way, not as your crisis responder, but as your daily companion. You'll begin to sense my spirit in the smallest things, not just in what feels sacred, but in what feels simple. You'll fold laundry and realize you're not alone. You'll be in a conversation and feel a quiet nudge to speak life. You'll stand in line and feel your heart soften toward a stranger. These are not coincidences. These are the manifestations of my spirit in you. Not loud, not showy, but real, constant, alive. You've learned to honor me in silence. Now I'm teaching you to recognize me in motion. That means I'll guide you, moment by moment, sometimes without a full plan. You don't need a detailed blueprint to follow me. You need sensitivity, and that's exactly what I've been refining in you, through the waiting, through the stripping away, through the quiet nights when you heard nothing but still trusted I was near. Now I want you to lean into that awareness as a lifestyle. Ask me anything, not just the big questions. Ask me, should I respond now or wait? Is this mine to carry? Is this a door or a distraction? I delight in being involved. And the more you include me in the small, the more peace you'll feel in the large. But this isn't about controlling every step. It's about resting in the assurance that you're not walking alone anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. Even when you forget, I remain. Even when your schedule pulls you into distraction, I'm still the ground beneath your feet. Even when old patterns try to creep back in, my spirit will remind you, you don't have to go there anymore. We're doing it differently now. There will still be days of silence ahead, not from distance, but from depth. And on those days, I want you to remember that silence is no longer your enemy. It's your sanctuary. You've learned how to be still and not feel abandoned. You've learned how to walk slowly and still feel led. That's evidence of maturity. That's what makes you trustworthy with more. Because you don't need noise to feel alive anymore. You don't need validation to feel secure. You don't need clarity to feel close. You need breath. And I am your breath now. So when your heart races again, pause. When fear rises, exhale. When lies whisper again, return to the truth. I am not alone. The Spirit of God dwells in me, and that is enough. You're becoming someone who doesn't just survive moments. You carry atmosphere. The Spirit that rests on you will begin to touch others too. Not through effort, but through overflow. You'll sense when to speak and when to stay silent. You'll discern what's urgent and what can wait. You'll move in love that isn't performative, but pure. That's what life with my Spirit looks like. Not perfection, but presence. Not striving, but surrender. Not pressure, but peace. You won't always feel dramatic spiritual awareness, and you don't need to. What you have now is better. The calm, rooted knowing that I'm here, I'm staying, and I'm breathing with you, moment by moment, breath by breath. Let me be your oxygen, not just your rescue. Let me be the rhythm, not just the refuge. Let me walk with you so closely that silence is no longer a pause between encounters. It's the very space where my voice grows more familiar. We've come this far together, and the breath that sustained you in the stillness will carry you into what's next. You're not who you were when this began. Even if no one else knows the weight of what you've carried or the depth of what's changed, I know. And that's enough. You've walked through stillness, not because you failed to speak, but because your soul was finding its footing again. You've lived days that felt like pauses, but they were actually deep recalibrations, realignment beneath the surface. Now you're not stepping back into noise, you're stepping forward into peace. You don't need to explain this season to anyone who doesn't understand it. What happened between us in the silence is sacred. It's not easily put into words, and it's not meant to be. Some things are too holy to be packaged. What you gained in this time isn't a teaching, it's a knowing, a new way of being. You don't just believe I'm near, you feel it now. Even when no one is speaking, even when everything around you goes quiet. The silence that once felt like abandonment is now your sanctuary. Let that stay with you. I am not sending you out with pressure. I'm sending you out with presence. My presence, steady and near, not just in high places, but in the slow hours of an ordinary day. The path ahead won't be loud. It won't always be dramatic. But it will be stable. And stability is what your soul needs now. Not more emotion, not more proving. Just peace, lived out in real time. That means you'll do things differently now. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're anchored deeper. You'll respond slower, but with clarity. You'll let people into your process without over-explaining it. You'll make a room for rest, not as an afterthought, but as a sacred practice. You'll protect your silence as something holy, not shameful. And you'll trust yourself again, because you've seen what happens when you stop pretending and start listening. I'm not asking you to return to who you were. I'm asking you to walk forward with who you've become. Gentle, grounded, awake, and yes, still in process, but aware, fully aware of my nearness, my kindness, and my unfailing love. You don't need to chase momentum. What's real doesn't rush. You've learned to walk in the dark, and now you won't fear it again. You've heard me without noise, and now my voice is familiar in the stillness. You've sat in what was uncomfortable and discovered that even there, I remained. So here is the final truth I want you to carry. Even when you fall silent again, I will still come close. Even when life grows heavy, I will not withdraw. Even when no one else notices the storm inside you, I will. Because silence was never a barrier to me. It was a doorway. And now that doorway remains open. Come through it as often as you need. Sit with me when words run out. Walk with me when you're unsure of the way forward. Let me steady you when the world spins too fast. Let me speak into your silence, not to fill it, but to honor it. Because your silence always mattered to me. Amen. If this quiet return reminded you of my nearness, don't walk away in silence. Let your voice be heard, even softly. Share what moved you. Someone else may need to know that their silence matters too. I'm still listening, and I'm still speaking, always.